Hello, everybody, and welcome. Today, I have the pleasure to have Amy Elizabeth Gordon. She has master's degree in contemplative psychotherapy, clinical psychology. She's a certified Imago relationship therapist and nationally certified addiction counselor. Welcome to the summit, Amy.
Thank you. Aloha. Thank you for having me on. I'm delighted to be here.
You are speaking to us from Hawaii, is it?
Yes, that's the aloha. And I know we're in very different time zones. So thank you for having this time slot available for me.
Yeah, it's 10:30 at night here in South Africa.
Yeah, it is 10:30 in the morning here. Yeah. Very different.
Very different. So you are a certified addictions therapist. Tell us a little bit about addictions and where they come from and how they relate to our topic of conversation.
Yes, thank you for asking. I believe that the two are so entwined, and I know they've been entwined in my personal life and in my professional development. I didn't know how to properly help people have the most incredible, extraordinary relationships possible without addressing the addictions. And I see addiction really through the lens of anything that robs our soul of the beauty of the present moment. That can be a substance, an activity, a process. When we have this avoidance of the direct experience of the present moment, we are most likely engaged in addictive behaviors. And we call it chicken skin. I get the chills just as I talk about that because I feel the truth of that in every cell of my being. And my body, as it went through sexual abuse and sexual misconduct, I was often under the influence of alcohol and drugs. And so I wasn't fully present to what was happening. And my soul was robbed of the beauty of the present moment. At the same time, there was a bit of saving grace in there because I wasn't fully present. So it's once again this opportunity for me to look at the both and, the bigger picture of there's no right or wrong, good or bad, yes or no. It's just what happened. And I spent many, many years, many moons looking for the rewind button. How can I go back and redo my childhood, redo my adolescence? I began drinking alcoholically at the age of 14. I was raped and lost my virginity at the age of 15. And both major life transitions happened at such a close time. And I was very much under the influence of alcohol and drugs when I was raped, that it became this dark neighborhood in my mind. And it was haunting and it was challenging. And my recovery from addictions, my recovery from unhealthy sexual relations, have really come together in a way where I feel this incredible opportunity to share my experience, strength, and hope with others, that I don't have to keep repeating the past, that it's okay. I can be safe here in this present moment and have the great good fortune of connecting with you in South Africa in this virtual way. Life is amazing. And I have an incredibly resilient spirit, and I'm grateful to help other people tap into that as well. So.
What is a resilient spirit? Can you elaborate on that one?
Certainly. Thank you. Resiliency for me is that ability to flex, to be flexible in the moment, to change and adapt where needed, and to bring in the very important spiritual truth, which is forgiveness. That notion that there is no rewind button, as I said earlier, that I can let go of the idea that I'll ever have a different past. That to me is the essence of forgiveness. It doesn't mean what happened is okay. It doesn't mean that it should or could have been different. It just means it's what is. There's an element of acceptance. So a resilient spirit for me is really being comfortable in my own skin, breathing into my tender heart, and inviting spirit home. Because I believe that my soul is just this one little neighborhood, this one little incarnation of the greater spirit, the creative spirit of the universe. And when I can find a way to invite spirit to come home, it's a result of that resiliency. I hope that makes sense. I get kind of wordy with things, but
yes, it does make sense. And when you're talking about forgiveness, what comes in mind is forgiveness to self first and
yes,
foremost, right?
yes,
Because I find that, especially when it comes to sexual wounds, there's a
mhm,
tendency to blame ourselves. How could I allow that? How could I react differently? Or did I invite it because of something I said or did or where, right?
yes, yes. Absolutely. I would elaborate on that. It absolutely starts with forgiveness of self. And when I think about my own journey, and at 15 going through the rape, I didn't even call it that for so long. I called it losing my virginity, because it was my fault. It was because I was drunk, because I was high, because I was in the alley in downtown Orlando, because I mean, the story is so big, that the amount of guilt that I carried based on my Catholic upbringing, the guilt that the person was a skinhead and a racist and a violent man, and my mind, in its unique effervescence of wanting to find joy, wanting to find home, wanting to find wholeness, I told myself I loved him. I convinced myself of these crazy, I can say crazy because it was my experience, crazy notions that in my right mind, in my sober mind, in my heart of hearts, I knew wasn't true. But at the time, I was trying to make sense of something that was unsensible. I don't even know if that's a word. It just didn't make sense. It was heartbreaking. It was robbing my soul. I've done a lot of work, the soul retrieval work, the recovery process, look, I mean, even these actions, inviting spirit to come home, to reintegrate, to find wholeness. But at the same time, I spent nearly a decade blaming myself, and it perpetuated continual alcohol use and abuse, setting myself up in continual situations of not only sexual mistreatment toward myself, but toward others. I began to see people as conquests, and I need them, and I will exert my power. And my sexual history is riddled with that. I don't even use the word victim and perpetrator anymore, but it was just a mess. It was a power play based on fear. Yeah.
Yeah, that resonates with me as well. I think I've had every possible addiction that is possible. I think I've had
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So, with addictions, there is that constant running after something to fill you, which doesn't actually fill you. And
Right.
so it's like running after, running after your own tail, and you
Yeah.
never get there.
Right.
So, and I know that everyone has an addiction. So what
Yeah.
is the right place to start? Is that again with that self-forgiveness and just acceptance of where we are at the moment with the addiction, and loving it for what it is, as a survival mechanism that at one point served us?
Yes. Yes. I do believe that awareness is absolutely essential. A lot of people run through lives and they're addicted to the dominant culture, to the drift, to the consumption, to the whatever it is, and they don't even have that acceptance because they don't have the awareness. So for me, it starts with awareness, which comes from a contemplative practice. For me, that is yoga and meditation daily, to get familiar with what are all these thoughts that are running through me, what are the pulls on my attention, the distractions, the thoughts that tell me, well, if I do this, it'll give me a temporary reprieve. I'll feel better for the moment, but in the long term, it's going to cause consequences. That's also addiction. And without the contemplative practice, without slowing down and having the awareness of what is going on in this present moment, shining the light here, I can't get to that next step, which is the acceptance of, ouch, this moment hurts. Breathing into my heart, this too shall pass. So I think the place for people to start is, don't be afraid of the present moment. Don't be afraid to put down the phone, the social media, the sugar. You know, today is Halloween here in in the U.S., and it's a time of great consumption of sugar. And to actually notice, like, is this going to get me where I want to go? Have the awareness, then have that important acceptance of, ouch, this is a tough moment. And then from that place, being able to take action towards different steps. The awareness, the acceptance, and the action, I think, are all needed as we start with our relationship with self. To me, it's the SOS of our times. It's like the smoke signals, the emergency that's going on all around us, because we are in an epidemic of addiction. We are in an epidemic of sexual misconduct, an epidemic of lack of self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-autonomy. This notion of self-sovereignty is something I've really been playing around with lately. When I was 15, I didn't have that. I didn't know that I was the queen of my own island, that I could actually have a say of what's coming into my body. And that gives me pause, and it brings, that sadness up again, but I don't have to run away with it. I can just be like, oh, that wave is still in there. I can be an embodied queen of my life today, feel the tenderness of that, breathe, and know my reality is vastly different today, vastly different. And for that, I'm really grateful. So.
Right, and this is very inspiring. And for the audience, you are the queen or the king of your life.
Yes.
And it's not superpower that just the few have. It is your power.
Yes.
And to access your power, you need to clear what stands in the way, because you are already a queen. You don't have to do anything to become one. So what stands in your way? This is what we're clearing, and bringing the awareness to understand what is it that stands in your way, and then have the guidance of how to move through the steps of clearing it.
Yes, absolutely. I so appreciate that you said that. I once again was covered in chicken skin. It's that spiritual aliveness, that electric vibration that comes over me when I resonate with what's being said, that energetic exchange, that we are transforming the planet one relationship at a time. It starts with our relationship with ourself, stepping into our own royalty, our own kingdom, and know that there's nothing we need to do to get there. It's about surrendering into that being. And from that beingness, doing the next indicated thing, and then having an extraordinary life, I feel like is a whole new framework, which is what I'm helping, teach to my sons, model to my sons. We also have our in-laws living with us. And so interacting with elders out of respect and admiration, living here in Hawaii, and this kapu aloha, the sacredness of aloha, the sacredness of compassion, the imperative that we must bring our best selves forth to every situation. And in doing so, we not only repair that relationship with self, we repair that relationship with other, and then we're reigniting that relationship with spirit, we're healing that relationship with society, and we're activating that relationship with our surroundings, because I am passionate Earth Mama. I want to heal the planet one relationship at a time. And I have the great good fortune of doing that work, but I do it in the relational field. I'm not out there, we plant trees on weekends sometimes, but I'm not a conservationist, hands-on, in the woods, on the oceans. I'm healing the relationships. And I've had the experience of going to Aotearoa, to New Zealand, and staying with the Maori and hearing them talk about, when we heal the relationships, the earth will respond, our landscapes will respond. Yes. And I get so passionate about this, and I just get lit up, because when we're polluting our bodies with alcohol and drugs, we're polluting the environment. When we're polluting our sacred temple with unconscious sexual activity, we are polluting the Mother Earth. And I feel like when we can start to see it through that lens, we can realize how every little thing we do matters. You matter, your relationships matter, I matter, my relationships matter. And somewhere in there, I get this momentary reprieve, and I feel like this being here is enough. And when I have that moment, it's very reassuring. My soul kind of gets this hum of like, finally you're getting it. Because otherwise I get caught in that doing of, I've got to do more. I'm do more. And then I'm just feeding that cycle of addiction and distraction and avoidance of direct experience. So I get fired up about this. It's the Pele energy. It's creative and destructive all at the same time. And my intention is to be a powerful point of presence and light on this planet. And doing this interview is one way of doing that. Sharing the message. I just wrote my transformational memoir. It's getting the message out there. It's serving people all the time and not feeling depleted myself. Because may I say one more thing?
Sure,
about
go
addiction?
For it. Yes.
Thank you. My studies in contemplative psychotherapy at Naropa, we studied Buddhist psychology. And one of the Buddhist families is called the hungry ghost realm. And the hungry ghost is this notion of it's a pencil thin neck, this tiny neck and this bloated belly. And we can never feel full. Just like you were beautifully saying earlier, addiction is looking for something to fill us and we never quite feel full enough. And that hungry ghost realm keeps me in this state of scarcity. And I think a huge part of healing my addiction and healing my relationships and healing the planet is to recognize that we have enough. We have enough resources. We have enough tools. We have enough consciousness that when we step into it, we're powerful beyond measure and we can experience abundance. And it's not just me, it's all of us. It's this notion that I've heard that one person standing in unconditional love and acceptance is 300,000 times more powerful than one ego constricted in fear. And I have been that ego constricted in fear. And when I touch into that, I get to call on my angels and that retinue of support and remember I'm not alone. Whew, this moment shall pass and come back and step into my power, which is 300,000 times more powerful in unconditional love toward myself. And this may be risky to say, but toward the people that have injured me in the past or been the perpetrators, to have complete and utter forgiveness for everyone, everywhere, all the time, including and most importantly, myself. I feel like from this foundation, I can be assertive, I can set boundaries, I can say never again, I can share my wisdom with many, many people. And in doing so, it changes the consciousness of our planet. So I believe that we're in an evolutionary consciousness rising right now. I love the title of your program. And it just caught my eye like that. And I immediately said yes, a full body yes. And we got through our technical difficulties and the time differences to show up because we are both invested in this. And I want to help amplify your message because it's important.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Thank you for these beautiful words. We actually get hurt in relationship and we also heal in relationship. Can you elaborate on that one? Because I want to quote something from your website. When you empowered, you want to empower others.
Yes. Thank you. When we just boil it down at the basic level, hurt people, and empowered people, empower people. And one of the basic premises of Imago relationship therapy is we are wounded in relationship and we can heal in relationship. And I've worked with so many people, and I've done this before in my life, in previous chapters of my life, of thinking, I just need to go and meditate on the mountaintop or go into my cave and get right with me, and then I'll be able to engage with others. And again, I think it's the both and. We need to appreciate the company we keep with ourselves. We get to have a relationship with solitude and with rejuvenation and restoration. And we are humans. We are wired for connectivity. We are social creatures. And to think I'm going to heal and be the perfect partner and find the perfect relationship just doing me is a myth. And I think to find myself in others and just serve others is a myth. It's the both and. It's what is the intersection between being able to self-soothe, to be fully responsible for who I am and how I show up and what happens in my life, and recognize one of the hardest things I ever said to my husband was, I love you and I need you. Because for me to survive what I survived through my life, one of my biggest boosts of energy was, I'm a survivor and I don't need anybody. And look how I turn my furrowed brow and my fists, like I'm a survivor. That's not going to get me where I want to go long term. It's releasing the pinch. It's softening the brow. It's softening my gaze, tenderizing my heart. You hear how my voice changes. I feel different. I occupy a different energetic level. I'm starting to use this language more and more. Before, I thought it was too woo-woo, and I was very science-based and a neuroscience, and that's all backing up these spiritual truths that I know to be true. And so I'm just letting my freak flag fly, and I'm just like, yes, let's do this thing. Let's acknowledge that we need each other, because thinking we don't, thinking there's a tower of power lording over us and telling us what to do, is an old paradigm. And here in the country, I live in Hawaii, which is its own country in my opinion, but in the United States, there's so much power struggle right now, and so much discord and dis-ease, that I feel as we as humans get empowered and recognize we need each other, we can heal, and we can see conflict is growth trying to happen. So instead of running from conflict and being afraid of it and just doing me, it's like, how do I show up? How do I be assertive? How do I speak lovingly, powerfully, tenderly, and ask for what I want? That's one of my favorite sayings to my boys, is when they ask for what they want, I say, thank you for asking for what you want, because I want them to know that that's important, to learn how to make requests of others, of the universe, and not just take and occupy and consume. I am raising conscious young men, and I feel like that's an important role as the queen of my life, is to allow their hearts to blossom. Can you relate to that?
I can so relate to that. I am a mother of three very divine souls that I do my best
Beautiful.
to bring them up in the most conscious way possible.
Yeah.
So yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. And I also am in a very long relationships, 23 years with the same man.
Beautiful.
So we went through every possible motion, I think there is, and we learned to come out of it stronger and in a deeper intimacy, and deepening the love, the essence of who we are, and meeting each other again and again on a different level of evolution.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love that, because it reminds me of what's so essential in relationships, which is feeling the safety and the predictability, the reliability. My husband will come home from work. If he's not on time, he'll text me, that sort of thing. But also inviting in the great mystery that he's constantly evolving, and I don't know him. I get to get curious about who he is. And in that, I just thought of another story. May I share another story
of course,
of hope and inspiration? I don't think of hope very much, because I think that keeps us caught in the future of if only. But there's a gentle, pure quality of hope, which is, again, that resiliency of the human spirit, of willingness to rise, and together we can. And I had the great good fortune about 6 years ago. I was living on the mainland, as we call it, and we were a host family for a young girl from Pakistan. And it was a special program. America was trying to better their relations with Pakistan. And so she came over and she was staying with us. And it was complete and utter culture shock. She had never had her own room. She had never slept in a bed. She had never been out at night by herself without curfew. She had never heard the quiet. We were living on an organic farm with the cedar trees, and she was used to hearing bomb blasts and different sounds. And we gave her a reprieve from that for a year. And we had kitchen conversations. And I love to think of the sacred in the ordinary, the spiritual in the mundane, and just standing in our kitchen and making food together and talking about sex and talking about what it means to be a woman. And she said, and she was a Christian from a Muslim country. And so she slowly began to pull off the layers and invite her full authentic presence in the kitchen. And I asked her about sex, and she said, "Oh, Mom," she called me Mom. She said, "Mom, I will not be engaged in such activities." And I said, "Okay, dear, but someday you may want to. And I want you to find someone who loves you for just who you are and treats you in a way that you feel so loved." And she's been reaching out to me, and she was having a tough time, and we were trying to connect in the virtual world. Anyway, long story short, after 6 years, I connected with her over the weekend. For 2 hours, we talked, and she's happy. She's engaged to her high school sweetheart from that high school that she came over to in America, that she rubbed oil in his head. That was the most physical contact she had with him. But it was a beautiful thing, because that's what she does in her country. They do head massages and just beautiful things. Anyway, she did that with him. They've reconnected. They're engaged to be married. She hopes to see him. She said, "Mom, the men here, they just want one thing from me, and I don't want that. And I had my parents stop bringing around suitors to marry me. And I want a man who's going to love me. I want to love this man the way you love Dad." And I swear my heart just swelled with appreciation, and to know the ripple effect that we powerful women in recovery, we powerful women who are resilient, we powerful women who are willing to say, "No, not that anymore. I'm not going to treat myself that way. I'm not going to allow myself to be treated that way anymore. I am here as a tender, powerful, generous woman to feel pleasure in my body, to give pleasure to others, and to feel the sacredness of sexuality, of life, of recovery." It's a dream come true. And I am delighted. That's the first time I've shared that story out loud out of my home. And it brings such joy that I hope it brings the listeners joy as well.
Oh, it's such a beautiful story. Such a beautiful story, and the impact that you had on this woman's life.
Yeah.
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 And it's we live in the West, and it's almost hard to believe how in these times still in some countries women are oppressed completely.
Yeah. Yeah. It is hard to believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I want to take our conversation back into the relationship aspect of our feminine and our masculine within and without. Can you elaborate on that one?
Yes. I believe it is a balance of both the inner masculine and the inner feminine coming together, having a healthy relationship within my own skin. And it's very interesting that you bring that up, because I think for many moons, I've considered myself very masculine, and I show up in a way where it's time to get things done, and, let's organize, let's make a plan, let's fix this now. And again, there's that rigidity but it serves a purpose. For me, it's very much like the left hemisphere of my brain. There's logic, there's linear, there's movement, there's structural support, there's strength, inherent strength in that. And then there's the fluidity and the receptivity and the femininity. And I wore this special dress today. It's a long flowing, it's one of the most feminine dresses I have, thinking about our time together and thinking about the surprise lunch that I'm going to go have with my beloved after this. And just that notion that I can step more fully into my feminine and know that I am safe, know that I am held. I sometimes come back to, well, what is it that's holding me? And when I start to question it, I just think, okay, I have the ever-present presence of gravity. That's a power greater than myself holding me. And I can just kind of surrender into the embrace of that. And then when I let my feminine receptivity come up, my husband's strength comes up, because he's actually more feminine than I am. He loves being home. He cooks the meals. He tends to the boys' owies when they get a scrape from skateboarding. And, he has more traditional feminine qualities. And I think when we can just recognize that in each other, find our inherent strengths and not think I need to change, but just a surrender, as you said beautifully earlier, like surrender into that being. I am a feminine presence. I have a lot of colleagues now sharing that with me, how they perceive that for me. And I'm like, oh, that's there. And then I start to feel less pain in my body, because historically I feel a lot of pain on my right side, the masculine side. And so it's like, as I step into my feminine, there's less pain finding hideouts in my body. There's more integration, and there's a greater acceptance that my husband actually has more masculine qualities than I originally saw. I fell in love with my wholeness in him, and I get to reclaim my wholeness in me and bring out the best in him as we continue on our evolutionary journey of going on 18 years of marriage. And we've known each other over 20. But yeah, it's powerful as we get into the next decade, the alchemical mix, the way we really are transforming each other. And it's beautiful. It's a delight. I'm grateful beyond measure to have that steady and mysterious relationship in my life. So I hope I explored masculine and feminine in the way that you were looking for.
Yeah, I wanted to relate it to, that dance between the feminine and masculine, because you said we need each other, and it's true. We do need each other.
Yeah.
We are so different energies that complete in each other, and when we find it within, we find it without. So yeah, absolutely need each other. And when the feminists came out, it was an important movement to say, hold on a second, the masculine has taken over for too many years, and that's not okay. But it came out with a masculine energy. And now we can allow ourselves to tap back into the feminine energy and say, this is the power of just being, and just, the creative movement, intuition, vision that we have in our essence is feminine, and knowing that that is supported and protected by our inner masculine, and if we're lucky, then by the outer masculine as well.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. I too, I know my mother was part of that movement in the 70s, and I was born in 1970. And at that time, she was really wanting to work out of the house. And she had 4 young boys in just starting the school, so it was a chance for her to go back to work. And she was Catholic, and she was on the pill, which I don't know if you're familiar with that. That was not okay to be using birth control, but she was, because she didn't want to get pregnant again, but she did. And, I was conceived, I know this to be true, the night that man landed on the moon. It was a cause for great celebration. My parents were in Florida. They were on the beach. They saw this historic moment. My brothers were running down the beach. My parents were not having a whole lot of sex at the time, but they did that night to celebrate. And I believe my saving grace is that I was a girl and not another boy, because I think that I don't know, that I think my father even shared that with me. Good thing you were a little girl. But the name of my book is Moonshot, to give thanks to the night man landed on the moon, to give thanks to the moonshot being that something extraordinary that we declare that wouldn't normally happen. We all have our moonshots, and mine is to aim high, dive deep, and live an extraordinary life. And the way my mom went about it was, she didn't know how to assertively ask for what she needed. My father did not help with the child rearing, and he wanted her home. He wanted her to be Miss Junior Society and hold these certain roles, and they didn't have the ability to communicate their needs and hold each other high. And they divorced when I was very young. And my mom definitely went the route of, I'm a survivor. I'm going to do this on my own. And again, here are my fists. I get to notice every time my fists do this. It's like, I didn't see her flower into another relationship with another man. She did have a dear friend who was a woman. They had businesses together. They lived together. There was some question whether they were lovers or not. My friends were questioning me, is your mom a, homosexual? And I was like, I don't know. And again, just inviting that mystery that she was my mom's life partner. She has since deceased. She's died. And my mom is now living on her own for the first time in her life. And she's in her 80s. And so she's finding who she is. And I don't want to wait till I'm 80 to find who I am. I want to find myself in relationship. And my mom and I have have really shared, I think, this path of finding the sacred feminine and recognizing it's not just burning bras and doing it the masculine way of that's not really ultimately getting us where we want to go. And so for my mom to read my book and to see what has happened in my life, she said she had to breathe into it. And she sees my big heart and she feels that. And we have a closer relationship now than we ever have before. And I'm grateful for her experience. I'm grateful for her mother, my maternal grandmother, who died of cirrhosis. She died of alcoholism. The Irish Catholic legacy of wounding around that ends with me. I get to make that shift for myself and for the 7 generations after me. And that's powerful. And I'm indebted to my grandmother and my mother for that journey, that multi-generational transmission that comes down, because there's a heck of a lot of power, a heck of a lot of grace and spirit beyond measure that I've also inherited. So I talk a lot. I hope that it's what you wanted. Please feel free to interrupt me when I get flowing here. So.
I'm sure the audience will relate to your stories, because often we have to go our way, which is not in line with our mothers or fathers, but we have to step up and say, this is my life and I'm going to live it the best I can, even if you don't approve it. And for some, it's a very hard step to do. And yet, if it's really significant relationship, they will come on board at the right time, even if you go and you do what you need to do. And the fact that today your relationship is better and you closer than ever before shows exactly that pattern, that, you know, do not hold back on your life, on your light, because somebody else from your family or your community or your country expects you to live in a certain way. You have to live your legacy, what you came here to do. And sometimes it's going against the herd or the parents, and more often than any other time. And what you also said, and I want to also mention that, is that we live in such incredible opportunity to heal ourselves now, and as you said, 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. So your healing is the best choice you can do for yourself, for your loved ones, for your community, and for the world.
Right, right. Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. That is so important to, I love that you brought up the word legacy, you know, leaving a loving legacy, leaving a legacy that matters. Really, as I said earlier, appreciating the company I keep behind closed doors. You know, that's the true judge of character, in my opinion, is what happens off screen, offline, you know, who is that person? And I love that person. And when I was 15, I didn't love myself. And so I gave myself away, and I looked for that love in other people. And I looked for making them happy so that I could be happy. And I had the equation all wrong. And I don't feel riddled with shame, blame, and criticism anymore. I feel the golden rule is I can't allow that in. You know, shame is that toxic feeling of not just I made a mistake, but I am a mistake and I was raped and it's my fault. And I'm, you know, it's like, I don't go there anymore. That is not my truth. I energetically comb that off of me. It's the freedom, the liberation that comes with healing the shame, the blame of others and myself, and the criticism. Criticism is the adult cry. Criticism is what I was doing with my mom, even in my early 20s, of, Mom, what happened to me when I was young? Why am I alcoholic? And you know what? For my mom to be healthy is for her to look at me and say, I didn't cause it, I can't cure it, and I can't control it. And that's what I want to say to others, that we get to be healthy in our, it's that both and. We are so connected and we co-create each other, and nobody else is responsible for how we turn out. It's, you know, the nature and the nurture. It's epigenetics, you know, what environment am I allowing certain gene expressions to happen? And I remember this funny story with my dad when he was still alive, when I started to attend Naropa, and it was a Buddhist school, and he was Catholic, and he didn't know what the heck I was doing. When I got sober, he didn't know I was alcoholic. You know, I felt like my dad doesn't know me, and it was a great pain point in my life. And I remember talking to him on the phone, the old days with the cord, and I'm sitting in my apartment in Boulder, Colorado. And he said, I don't know about this Europa or whatever it is. He didn't even know the name of the school. He called it Europa. He said, but I can tell you're happy, and that makes me happy. And so I support you in what you're doing. And it was like, wow, mind blowing, heart expanding. I didn't need his approval, but gosh golly, getting his blessing sure fed my soul, right? It was like, because if I needed his approval, I would have done everything he had suggested, which as a young girl, he used to have me walk with a book on my head so that I would be of perfect posture when I was Miss America. And all these things that I was like, oh my gosh, that's so not me, right? But what he did is he helped me bring out my best and love up my heart. And the story that I was too emotional or too sensitive, it doesn't serve me anymore. So I get to rewrite that story of, okay, Dad, you were doing your level best. Thank you. And my sensitivity is my superpower. I get to really recognize that I can pick up on different energies, and that can be a powerful thing to recognize, to have awareness of, to have acceptance of, and to take appropriate action with. So,
Right.
yeah.
And it's also important to recognize our humanity and love all the unlovable parts. And that's really the journey, because we all have those moments that we look at ourselves and we say, ooh, how can that be loved? And still breathe into that and love that part, right?
Yeah. I like to think of it as sit down and have a cup of tea. Like, oh, there's that part. Because truthfully, and the neuroscience shows this, that which we resist persists. So when there's some part of myself that I'm still rejecting, it'll just keep coming up. Or if there's some part in someone else that I'm rejecting, and this is key for relational health. We think, oh, I'm just going to go find another relationship. And the names and the faces may change, but whatever we get to work with will continue to show up until we properly sit down and have a cup of tea with it and really recognize on some quantum level, there's no out there. When you spot it in somebody else, you've got it in you. And it may be some unhealed part of yourself, some lost aspect of self, but to really bring that in a fully inviting way. You're probably familiar with the Rumi poem, The Guest House. We invite them in laughing, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who sweep our house. I'm paraphrasing, but it's that notion of, and he sums it in a beautiful saying. Rumi says, all of you is welcome here. Yeah. And I used to think that was a grammar error. All of you is welcome here. It's like, no, yeah, all aspects of who you are is welcome here in this moment. Let us rejoice and be glad and celebrate that. And I think from that place is an incredibly liberating place, because we're no longer blaming others. And there's a lot of responsibility, the ability to respond to life and do this, what I call this gig called life, with grace and ease and flow and power.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's also, once you allow all the feelings to be there without judgment, you strengthening your inner resources, your resilience increases, and you don't have to linger in those states of mind. So for me today, I can really process emotions very quickly. If the and emotions of course come and go. If I lose somebody I love, I feel grief, and I will take the time and cry it and process it. When my grandmother passed away, I was in Costa Rica, and I took a few days and I sat on the beach and allowed myself to cry and process that grief. And I felt that I came into a completion with it. And so I don't have to linger in it, and it doesn't have to define me, right? So it's just an emotion, an emotion that passes through me. But nevertheless, when it's there, I acknowledge it. I give it time. I give it space. I feel it, but I also let it go. I'm not attached to it. Whether it's bliss and ecstasy or sadness, sorrow, and grief, it's exactly the same.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love that. I've never thought of that emotion has motion in it. It's the E motion, as you said, it very articulately. It's like, oh, right, there's an energetic motion. It's moving through. And I think to add to that, I can create stories that support the emotion and I keep reliving it. And if it's one of a negative vibration, it becomes a resentment. And the resentment I've heard described as like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It's very toxic to my system to keep reliving those negative stories. So I have a daily practice when I go to the beach or have an opportunity to just tap on my heart and put in all the negativity, all the dark energy, all of the energy of lack, and drop those stones from my heart to clear that up. And it's not saying I didn't feel even anger. Anger has served me a lot in dealing with sexual healing, because anger is a natural energy that arises to reestablish boundaries and set right something that's wrong, period. Beyond that, it loses its efficacy and it becomes toxic. It becomes hatred, and hate begets hate. I don't have space in my heart, in my mind, in my soul for hate. It doesn't serve me. And I want to go back to your original statement about this feminist movement being very masculine. I personally have felt that way about the Me Too movement as well. And I'm like, wow, okay, hashtag Me Too. And I'm not going to wave the banner of hatred and violence and going after people in terms of retribution or accusations or any of that. And that's just my take on it. So there needs to be space for that feminine energy to really speak louder than the angry voice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. I mean, the Me Too movement came in a harsh way, but it needed to come out. So it's exactly the same energy that came as we spoke about the feminist. It needed to break into the open and come out of the closet and the shadows into the awareness of society. And so society can really look at the vast epidemic that it is.
Yeah.
But the next stage is, how do we take responsibility and make the conscious decision to heal that with ourselves? And when we do that, the healing process itself, that is the awakening to the higher realms and all the gifts that comes in the journey of healing itself, that brings us to the next level of our own evolution. And when we go through that process, we drop that need to blame and to, to blame the other or blame the self. But this is only after processing the anger and processing the hatred, if it's there, right? To feel it fully, and then let it dissolve and melt and create space for compassion.
Right. Thank you for saying that. It is that both. We needed that energetic intensity to break the silence. I'm definitely a silence breaker, and I encourage everyone to do so. And from that place, process, metabolize the emotions, because when we don't, they hang out in pockets of dispirited gloom. So to be able to metabolize what's going on, metabolize the grief of our life, metabolize the hurts, and to assimilate what we need from it and eliminate the rest, and then use our energy, the energy that's the result of that, to be that powerful presence. And so I love what you're saying, that it is, it happened as it needed to. And for me to say it shouldn't have been that way is perpetuating the very thing that I'm saying shouldn't be. So it kind of reminds me sometimes of looking in the mirror, and all those different levels of perspective. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and the trust that somehow this epidemic also has some blessings in disguise. Maybe the collaboration of all these women that are ready to heal their wounds, because it's possible. It's possible to completely heal and rise above them, although they very deep and they haunting if you don't do the work, if you don't clear them out. But if you do and you come out on the other side, you are a powerhouse of pure potential to heal this planet. And I believe that when we heal our sexuality, we heal life force energy, which has such an effect and on everything
Yeah.
on this planet, right? So
Right.
maybe the power of the epidemic is what will propel our sexuality to the next level of evolution, so we can tap back into the innocence, the playfulness,
Yes.
the the sovereignty of our sexuality.
Yes. Yes. Beautifully said. The sacredness of it is
Right.
powerful. And what really jumped out to me was that notion of trust. And I believe that that's where it all starts. You know, as I go through my moonshot, my transformational memoir, which is so in my mind, she's just into the world. I also give exercises for people to integrate their own life story and the 12 distinctions of that extraordinary life. The first one being trust. And I think so much of the time women do not trust their partners, be it male or female partners, and they look to other to reestablish that trust, when it really starts with trusting oneself, to no longer abandon oneself. And that when we have that foundation, it is a beautiful place to move into focus, repair, faith. Those are the first four distinctions that I talk about. And faith is really important because faith, to me, growing up with the concept of God and religion that I had, was very patriarchal. And I wanted to shift that. And so believing in goddess energy, believing in the sacred masculine and feminine coming together, having faith that I don't have to figure all this out on a daily basis, and it's constantly evolving. I've come to hear, I heard this last week, that joy is the expression, the emotion of faith. And that commitment, the service, the taking action is the demonstration of faith. And so what you and I are doing, I feel like, is that. It is, because for me, sacred sexuality is so much tied to sacred spirituality. It is tied to sacred presence. So I think of it as the arc of connection. The A is addictions recovery, the R is relational healing, and the C is that contemplative practice of getting outside daily and inviting spirit home, doing yoga, doing
I
meditation.
love that. Yes.
Yes.
Love that.
Yeah. I have the great good fortune of looking at Mount Awakea with the lay of clouds coming around the base. And there's a big sovereignty movement going on here now about protecting the sacred land. And we don't need another telescope built up there. And there's a lot of indigenous wisdom that is rising, and the modern technology that can marry with it. And I think that we're in this cultural revolution, and we are social pioneers, spreading the message of resiliency, spreading the message of sovereignty, stepping into our own queendom or kingdom.
Right.
And from this place, beautiful things are emerging. I feel it. It's already happening. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so I just want to end the resilience part with investing in the inner resources,
Mm-hmm.
because the more you fill yourself with what really nourishes your soul, then that establishing a better resilience to then go through the motions of life, because there are storms in life and they will always come. And being enlightened or spiritually awakened, or any of those states, will not it will not pass you. Life will not pass you by, and things can happen. And for you to be able to deal with whatever life brings, and the challenges, you have to invest in your inner resources. And so I know that one very major resource is nature and Mother Earth, and connecting to the elements, the water, the fire, the air, and the earth. And when doing that, when touching the earth, and swimming in the waters, and blessing the waters when we drink them, and you know creating conscious breathing, and bringing the element of fire when it's in our passions, and zest to life, and lighting the fire, and sitting with the light of the candle,
Mhm.
This is always to fill in the inner resources. And you mentioned before some physical activity like yoga or any other form of physical activity that does it for you. There's many ways to explore it. So yeah, this is all ways to fill in your inner resources so you don't fall into addiction, and you can pull it when you need it, when life
Yes.
is challenging.
Yes. Beautifully put. I am just soaking it all in what you're saying. It so lands with me. Deep resonance, deeply resonate with what you're saying. And I have the great good fortune on mornings of going out onto the mighty Pacific and paddling in a 6-person canoe. And yesterday we got to go surfing because the waves are starting to come up as the seasons change here. And we were surfing in and just riding the power of the waves and feeling that exhilarations with people of so many different backgrounds, all in the same va'a, the same canoe. And to me, that is life, that I used to think that, you know, we needed this consciousness shift of everybody agreeing on the same thing. And I don't believe that to be true anymore, that there's a recognition that we are not me, and that we all have our sacredness, our own sovereignty, our own powerful presence on this planet. And when we can paddle in the same direction and ride the natural energy of the wave and celebrate sunrise with Mauna Kea, and oh my gosh, it's the trifecta of bliss, my sobriety, the sunrise, and the wave. It's like, woo! This month is my 25th anniversary of sobriety from alcoholism. And I'm just like, wow, how can I celebrate? And how can I spread more powerful message of recovery and resiliency, and the great good news of what it means to be a woman on the planet at this time. And it's a blessing beyond measure, for sure.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
So is there any takeaways that you can leave the audience with?
Yes, I'm sure I gave a lot. Please take what you can use and leave the rest. But I think one of the most helpful things that I've heard from clients throughout the years is this willingness to drop the stones of resentment from your heart. So just take a moment to pause after this beautiful video, this generous offering, and just, bring your hand to a fist. Feel that tightness, feel the pinch of all the messaging you're getting that's not feeding your soul, of all the activities or actions that you're doing or that are going on around you. And just be aware, have the acceptance, ouch, this hurts, bring it to the heart, and just tap, wake it up a little bit, and then powerfully let it go. Just open the hand. You can't see what I'm doing, but I bring my hand to the heart and then I sweep it down. And when I'm on the shore, I'll find a stone that's about the size of a heart. It doesn't have to be heart shaped, but about, it's about fist size. And I'll bring it there, and it's a piece of lava or a stone, and just put that energy in and drop it, because the earth can hold it. Because when we free ourselves, when we liberate from that, we're then able to tend to the earth, and the earth needs our attention. Yes. And I think the way we can do that is by being resilient, dropping the stones of resentment from our heart, and letting, as Mary Oliver, the beautiful poet, says, let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, and the poem goes on. It's a beautiful poem, and I believe that we all have that soft, tender body in there, and we have more in common than we realize. I think we all crave peace, and deep love and deep belonging. And when I can find that common denominator, despite external appearances, I can breathe a heavy sigh of relief and drop that stone of resentment as well. So thank you for letting me share my passion and exchange energy with you. It's such a delight. I just get this picture of, our energetic currents around the globe, and all the listeners that are listening to this, and powerfully share the message. And yay. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Amy, for your well of wisdom and sharing it so beautifully with us, and coming on board and bringing in your magic.
You are so welcome. Moonshot magic. Let's change the world one relationship at a time, shall we?
Yes, let's begin.
Thank you so much. It's my
Thank you.
pleasure.
Yeah, and do you have a free gift to leave the listeners so they can opt in into your
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
I will provide the link to you. My biggest passion is around couplehood, because I feel like there's such a great opportunity there for not only the self-healing, the self-sovereignty, but also bringing out the best in the other, and then the ripple effect on our children. And so I have the couplehood mindset that I filmed with my husband. It's 6 modules. It's a virtual platform, and I will send the link, and I'd be happy to share that generously, so that the listeners can learn more about my work and take advantage of learning tools to really tend to the space between, and be that source of resiliency.
Oh, so beautiful. Thank you so much. I think
You're
everyone
welcome.
can benefit from bettering their relationships. It
Yes.
affects everything else in life. So
Yes.
thank you so much for this generous gift and for being here. And if the listeners wants to contact you further, how can they do that? What's the best way?
My website is amyelizabethgordon.com, and there's a wealth of information there. May I hold up my book? Would that be okay?
Yes, of course.
She's my baby. So here's Moonshot. Aim high, dive deep, and live an extraordinary life. That's the spelling of my name, Amy Elizabeth Gordon. And this is a beautiful offering, meant to inspire and be that powerful change that I wish to see in the world. So a colleague recently said it's hauntingly beautiful. So the first part is kind of what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. So don't quit before the miracle, and don't give up on yourself, because you matter and your relationships matter. So thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And ciao from now.
Yeah. Aloha. Bye-bye.
Aloha. Bye now.